Welcome in, latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Breton. I go by SEC Mike on the Twitters, and there is our good friend, Steven Lassan, senior editor at Laud Sports. How's it going, buddy?
Mike, it's going great. Game day's a few days away. We got Halloween coming up on Thursday. We've got some awesome matchups, and we also got the playoff rankings coming up. So, man, what a crazy time in the world of college football. I'm looking forward to another weekend of chaos and craziness, hopefully.
Yeah, and man, we need some upsets. You know what? I feel like last weekend we didn't get quite enough upsets. We're going to make your predictions coming up for the SEC weekend, but are you feeling any upsets in the air, Steven?
I am. I've got one picked as a teaser, as we say in this business, so hang tight.
Okay, so we're going to get to that here in a minute, but as always, we've got to remind the folks that we are brought to you by MyBookie, the online sportsbook. MyBookie.ag is the website. The promo code is that SEC, THATSEC. This is the number one way to help the podcast this football season. Go over to mybookie.ag today. Sign up for an account. The account's free, but if you put any money in, your initial deposit, put in that promo code, that SEC, they will double your initial deposit today. And all the lines that we're referencing here on this episode while we make our predictions are via MyBookie. So, Steven, We are going to make these picks here in a minute, and I can't wait to see, because it seems like you're always, even at the last minute, you are juggling, some of these marquee games on what to do. How confident are you in your selections before we reveal them?
Mike, that is a very accurate assessment. I can give you a story. So up at athlonsports.com, we have predictions for every game during the week. And I agonized over my Buffalo, Akron, and my Northwestern Purdue pick. So to say that I'm sweating this out until the last minute, yes, that is a very accurate assessment. And I am sort of I feel okay about most of these this week. I've got one, like I said, I got one upset picked. But yeah, I'm thinking we're in for another good weekend of games here. A lot of these, for the most part, under 10 points. So hopefully there's some chaos and maybe more than one upset.
Well, I'm never upset, Steven, when our man, the legend, JR, he donates a membership. He just did it again. What a guy. Cousin JR, he donated a membership to Cousin Dustin. Dustin, welcome to the family. And again, I want to... always forget. I'm a terrible host. But so this will be part one. We got part two coming up. We got Cousin Shane at the top of the hour. We're going to do an SEC mailbag show. And then after the mailbag show, so around 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central, we're going to do the latest family reunion. So you become a member of the channel, hit us up on YouTube. There's already a link. I've already posted it. There's a link to join us on Zoom after hours. It's not going to be recorded. It's never going to be posted anywhere. So join up if you want to get in there. And it's too X-rated for Steven. Steven said, I want no part of this family reunion. He considered going to one, and then he found out how off the rails we got on the first one.
I'm still waiting for my invite. Can I throw a mailbag question into you guys for later?
Absolutely.
Well, I want to ask Cousin Shane how he's feeling about Tennessee's playoff hopes before we get to the month of November. And also curious to see if there's been any trash talk between Cousin Shane and the guys over at Kentucky Sports Radio this week, too.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you bringing that up, Steven, because we did talk to our good buddy Nick Roush from Kentucky Sports Radio. We haven't posted that yet. We'll post it tomorrow, but you are not going to want to miss that. We also talked to Matt Hayes from USA Today, and he's got an explosive column he put out last week on all these teams complaining about Texas and their baby Charmin soft schedule. So great deep dive there. We'll post that tomorrow as well. So we got a lot of content coming your way. Let's not delay any further. Oh, wait. Well, we do have to delay. I apologize, because I got something, Steven, I wanted to throw your way. This was fascinating. And I think we're going to get this guy on the line too, hopefully this week. But our good buddy Dave Bartu, CFB Matrix, he does coaching analytics. He helps with coaching hires and all this. Another thing that he does is he has cracked the formula on the playoff committee's top 25. And you say, well, how's he cracked it? He won't give away the secret, but every week, right before they post the playoff top 25, which is always on a Tuesday, he posts on Monday his projected playoff rankings. And he says he's got the formula, and he usually gets about 22 to 23 of the top 25 right, and he gets them within a spot or two of virtually every single one. So, and he's been doing this for years. So, having said all that, Stephen, he has revealed to me heading in to week 9. Again, things will change over the weekend as we get more results. But heading into this weekend, this is pretty shocking to me, Stephen. According to Dave Bartu, if the playoff committee made their rankings based on the formula that he has cracked, not a single SEC team would rank in the top 4. How big of a surprise, before we reveal, and he's given me the top 15 here, before saying that, how big of a surprise is it to you that the committee, according to Dave Bartu, would not have a single SEC team in the top 4?
I'm pretty surprised, honestly. If you just look at the coaches poll and the Associated Press poll, you're likely to get 2 Big Ten teams in there, maybe 3, depending on what happens with Ohio State, Penn State this weekend. But I think there's a pretty big drop-off. I mean, Miami would be in that discussion, but they have played with fire, the last couple of weeks. To me, they're not any better than any of these SEC teams. So I am stunned to see that. And so if that happens on Tuesday night, I cannot wait for the angry SEC fans to come at the committee, because that would be pretty shocking.
Sorry, Stephen. They're asking for the link to become a member, so I'm dropping that in. But all right, so let's get to what Bartu has shared with me. According to his model, which again he's cracked the code here, Texas A&M would be the highest ranked SEC team. No surprise. Well, I guess maybe there is a surprise. Remember, this playoff poll always seems to deviate from the AP poll, from the coaches poll, and wouldn't you know it, Stephen? Usually the AP and the coaches follow suit of the playoff poll, but his model has got A&M number 5. So, again, not really surprising. They're the only undefeated SEC team in conference play. He's got Georgia number 6. He's got Texas number 8, Tennessee number 10, and Alabama 15. And we reached out to him and said, well, what about LSU and Ole Miss? He said they'd be top 25-ish, but he just gave me the top 15. So, again, one time real quick. A&M 5, Georgia 6, Texas 8, Tennessee 10, and Alabama 15 heading into the weekend. What's your reaction after hearing that?
I'm pretty stunned, Mike. To be honest with you, I anticipated Georgia just being the top ranked team here. Obviously, they have a loss to Alabama, but still the win over Texas and also a good win over Clemson in the season opener. And I think you could argue, I think Clemson is probably better than Miami right now if they were to play tomorrow for the ACC championship game. So to me, Georgia's got 2 really good wins, and A&M with the loss to Notre Dame. If I'm curious to see, like in Dave's metric there, where Notre Dame would be, because if you're giving A&M a lot of credit for beating LSU and Missouri, they absolutely should be in the top 10. I just don't know how you could have them ahead of Georgia. And also, does that mean Notre Dame is a top 5 team after the loss to Northern Illinois? I certainly wouldn't put them there. So I'm not one to question the Matrix and Dave Bartu, but that does puzzle me a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I wanted to share it, because I found that so fascinating. But again, we'll see. Things will change given this weekend's results heading into the first official college football playoff projections in less than a week. It'll be a week from yesterday. So we'll find out more about that as we get there. But all right, Stephen, before we get to your predictions here, don't forget PrizePicks. What in a world is PrizePicks? Daily fantasy selections here. Go over there, play $5, get $50 instantly with the promo code SEC. We love PrizePicks with this daily fantasy because they got college football selections, they got NFL, they got NBA, they got all the sports covered, but we love it because of the college football ones. And all you got to do is pick 2 players, and you're going more than or less than their projected yardage or touchdowns, or longest rush, longest reception. And if you get 2, you win. If you get as many as 6, I believe you can 10x your money. So head on over to PrizePicks, Steven, and I've sent you over some of the SEC selections this week. Who are you feeling most confident on the PrizePicks selections?
Speaking of sweating out last minute decisions, I have been so just to kind of give the cousins a good view of this. Mike sends me this in the morning, and I agonize over this all day, and I make notes, and then I ask him, and then I make more notes. So I'm dedicated. I want to make sure we get the cousins some winners on the PrizePicks this week. Let's start with Arkansas, because Arkansas and Ole Miss is the game in PrizePicks right now. I'm going to take the less than side of Taylon Green passing plus rushing. He is at 271.5. I think it's kind of a question of how this game is going to play out, because you have 2 high-powered offenses, but you also have an Ole Miss defense that's really good. Arkansas at home, we saw a few weeks ago what they were able to do with Tennessee. So I'm curious to see how this game will play out. But I think when you look at how Taylon Green's numbers, especially the rushing, has fared against good defenses, they've been under 10 yards. So I think take the less than side of Taylon Green at 271.5. On the more than side for Arkansas, I would take Luke Haas. He's at 24.5 receiving yards. Mason Taylor, a few weeks ago when they played Ole Miss, he had 43 receiving yards. It does feel like Luke Haas kind of came alive last week, albeit it was against Mississippi State. But I think those are 2 pretty solid plays from the Arkansas side. On the Ole Miss side, I'm going to take the less than side of Henry Parrish. He's at 64.5. He's been under 50 yards the last 2 weeks. Ole Miss offensive line on the road against a good Arkansas front. I'm curious to see how that will play out. But I think I'm taking the less than side on that one. And a little bit of a kind of asterisk here. If we knew more about Trey Harris, I'd feel better about giving you a play on the Jackson Dart one. But just being able, not knowing his status, I think it's kind of tough. I think you'll want to check the injury report before you make a play there.
Right, and the initial injury reports will be released here in about 2 hours. So sorry that we're doing a little early. I always feel bad, Steve. I asked you to make your predictions, and then the injury report comes out almost immediately after the selections are made. But yeah, it's wild how integral Trey Harris has been to the whole Ole Miss operation, and without him in the lineup, they're just not the same on offense.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Mike. He's at 289.5 in passing yards. It kind of feels like right on the edge if you, with or without Trey Harris to begin with. I think, is that fair?
I think that's very fair. And another point, though, why I like a lot of those less thans that you just referenced also is, and we were talking about this off air, but the perception is Ole Miss is this high-flying offensive unit, and Lane Kiffin, he's got that reputation, but they are significantly better on defense this year than they are offense, and that's even with Trey Harris in the lineup. So, I don't know. We may be getting a low-scoring game here. I really do think.
Last 4 games for Ole Miss, they have been held under 30 points. I think that's kind of, my first impression of this game was, wow, there could be really some fireworks here. But the more I think I kind of study it, the more I'm leaning to probably a little bit lower scoring defensive game, I think.
Right. And it's almost vindicated all these people that said this cupcake schedule. And then as soon as they hit SEC play, and they're not alone. I'm not picking strictly on them. I mean, same thing with Tennessee. I mean, scoring in bunches, and then they got an SEC play. They haven't cracked over 25 in SEC play. So it just means more defense down here, Steven.
There's good defensive linemen and good defenses in this conference, right? Some of these teams can play a little defense, and it's like you said, Mississippi has been great on defense this year. One of the best in the SEC, scoring yards per play. We also talked about Arkansas and what they did. I know Tennessee's not great offensively right now, but still a really impressive performance at home. And I think on the road in Fayetteville, we know the Arkansas crowd's going to show out. The under might be a very intriguing play if you want to look ahead a little bit to my bookie picks.
Right. And a couple quick shout outs, Stephen. Ethan Martin, appreciate you, brother. He just became a member to the channel. Hopefully, we'll see you tonight at the family reunion. Chicken 1515. He just donated one to blah blah blah. That's what I think of every time I talk to my girlfriend. Blah blah blah. And then so we appreciate you, chicken. And then how about Razor Bass 904, Steven? He's got a question or more of a statement more than anything. Ole Miss is not making the playoff after Taylor Green and them Hogs beat the tits off Kiffin and the Rebels this weekend. Hogs by 90. We appreciate you, brother, but yeah, I don't want to give away your selection. So maybe when we get to your pick, maybe that's a better time to ask you about that one. But anything else, Steve? You got any more prize picks, or is that it?
Mike, I think that's it. Like I said, I'm hoping we get some clarity on Trey Harris, and that will kind of guide us a little bit more on Jackson Dart. But feeling pretty good, relatively speaking, on the Steven Lassan panic meter when it comes to these things.
All right, so let's get into the predictions, Steven, for this week. And again, all the lines come via our good friends over at MyBookie. Don't forget mybookie.ag, promo code that SEC to double your initial deposit today over at MyBookie. So for one game though, Steven, probably shouldn't even be playing these games. These are week 1 games or right before rivalry, and this is right before Halloween. So I'm not a big fan of these, but we got to break it down anyway. Maine at Oklahoma. There's no spread because, again, this is FCS here. But lordy, Stephen, what will you be looking for in this game? And please don't tell me the Sooners are going down, because if they do, man, there's going to be – I can't imagine the hell the Venables going to catch if that happens. You know what?
What's like the worst kind of like Halloween candy you could get, right? That's like
candy corn.
Candy corn. Okay, yeah. That's what this game is on a slate that's, throughout the Kit Kats and the Twix and the Reese's and all that. So I think just this game is about Oklahoma. It's about building confidence, keeping those bowl hopes alive for another week. Also, can you build some things offensively that translate to those last 3 SEC games? If they can win this one, you set up a chance next week against Missouri. Who knows what Brady Cook's status is going to be? You got a chance at least to get to 6 wins. So for me, this is all about Oklahoma using Maine as a testing ground to get better for those last 3 games. All attention on the offense, seeing what Jackson Arnold can do, what kind of tweaks are they going to be able to build on going forward. So I don't expect Oklahoma to sweat too much in this game. I like them 48-7.
Ooh, yeah. I'm hoping for, quite honestly, Stephen, I'm hoping for it's even more lopsided than that. But it probably could be, if they left their starters out. But this is, like you said, they got 3 critical games coming up here. You don't want to leave the starters out there too long or anything like that. But what's your thoughts on Jackson Arnold since he's come back in and been a starter? He had a solid performance in the first half against Ole Miss, a very good Ole Miss defense, by the way. He's clearly not getting a lot of help with the offensive line with the injuries at receiver. What's your read on Jackson Arnold after he has been reinserted into the lineup?
I like the fact that they were running him more. Obviously, I don't think you can handle 24 carries a game in SEC play week in and week out. But I think at this point, you have to try some different things offensively if you're Oklahoma. Also, no interceptions last week, just taking care of the ball. I think Jackson Arnold is like, his development is one side of it. The other side is there's so many injuries at receiver. Your offensive line is banged up. It makes it hard to evaluate him. So I think these next 3 games are really critical. Almost like this weekend, you could build some confidence, which might carry over into those SEC games. Maybe you get some guys back and you can kind of evaluate your offense a little bit better. But I thought that was a step forward, albeit it might just be a small one just because of the personnel that he's dealing with this year.
Mm-hmm. And I don't like to jump ahead, before we even get to these games. But again, this Maine should be a laugher. So what are the prospects? Because Missouri's not playing this weekend, so there's no more data or information that we'll glean from them this weekend, other than Brady Cook's availability. And the way I hear it, Stephen, that Brady Cook very unlikely to play against Oklahoma. Now, Drink came out today and said they do not anticipate him missing the rest of the season. So He is expected back. Again, I'm not trying to break any news here, but just the way I hear it, I don't think he'll be back. So, given that information, Stephen, Oklahoma at Missouri, if let's say Brady Cook does not suit up, who would you favor to win that game, knowing what you know today?
The under, probably. I think. um, I like Oklahoma's chances in that game. I don't know if I'd necessarily pick them, but I think if you give me a healthy Brady Cook for Missouri, I would easily pick them. But I think if you tell me that Missouri's shorthanded at quarterback, I've seen Drew Pine play at Missouri and other places. I think we kind of know what kind of quarterback he is. He might benefit, of course, from having a full 2 weeks to get ready as the starter. This looks like definitely a more lower scoring game, but I think you have to be optimistic here if you're Oklahoma. Missouri's missing a starting quarterback. You can take your good defense on the road and have a chance at the upset. So, yeah, I would upgrade their chances of winning that one next week.
And I think it's fair to say, Stephen, that each coach will be facing real pressure. Again, I hate to sit here and preview next week so early, but each coach is going to be facing a ton of pressure, Brady Cook or not. Drink, I don't think he can lose this game without the fans being upset, and certainly Venables, who they don't respect Missouri at all, just given what I know from Oklahoma fans. So it's like a must win for both coaches.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a rivalry that is renewed based upon, conference realignment. And also, I mean, just for Missouri, we have wondered, where does the season go from here with no hopes of making the college football playoff? Can you keep this team together? Well, you go to South Carolina a week after playing Oklahoma. It's a really tough 2-game stretch. Now, on the other side of things, if you're Brent Venables and you can win Maine plus Missouri, you get to 6 wins, and you don't necessarily salvage your season, but I think maybe you change the narrative a little bit going into the offseason. 6-7, 7-6 looks a heck of a lot better than 5-7, right?
Right. All right. So now let's get into the games. I actually have a point spread, Stephen, as they all should at this end of November here. But we got UMass. Wow. I mean, they got like 9 SEC games this year. Hopefully, I don't even think this is the last one. No, they get Georgia here in a couple. Good night. But they get Mississippi State this weekend. That's what we care about right now, Stephen. Mississippi State, an 18-point favorite. The over-under is 60 total points, according to MyBookie. And this game kicks off at 3:15 Central on the SEC Network. Stephen, what's your thoughts on this one?
I think if you're Mississippi State, the key thing is to just take care of business. You're a heavy favorite here. UMass lost to Missouri 45-3 a few weeks ago. So it's really this game to me, much like Maine and Oklahoma. Take care of business, get the victory, empty the bench, play a lot of players, hope for no injuries, and set yourself up for those last couple SEC games. So I think this, on paper, it should be a very easy win for Mississippi State. I will be very concerned if UMass keeps this game close.
Mm-hmm. And I think it'll be critical for Mississippi State, Stephen, to show signs of life on the defensive side of the football after just being thrashed by Arkansas. Maybe the most underrated team in the SEC, but depending on, how healthy Taylor Green is. And, of course, he looked quite healthy last week with his 6 touchdowns. But if they cannot show signs of progress on the defensive side of the football against UMass, I don't even know why we would not fire the defensive coordinator probably right after the game.
I mean, UMass is averaging under 20 points a game this year, and their only time that they have scored over 30 was in games against FCS opponents. So there is really no reason for Mississippi State to give up a bunch of points and yards here. To your point, Mike, this defense is struggling. Coleman Hutzler's on the hot seat. To me to have a shot at year 2, the next 4 games are going to be pretty critical. So if UMass scores 20 or 30 points here, I will be very worried for this defense even more.
Yeah, and again, this will be a real opportunity, or at least it should be, for Michael Van Buren to keep padding those stats. And, I don't know about you, Stephen, but I've been impressed with Mississippi State's ability to run the football, because I didn't know who in the heck any of these guys were heading into the season after all this transition. And we knew what Levy was. We knew what his system was. We anticipated they added all kinds of receivers. and it seems like they've hit on several. Kevin Coleman is one of the leaders in the SEC in receiving. But how surprised are you that the ground game for Mississippi State has been so effective?
Yeah, very surprising. Also Mario Craver at receiver, I think he's been pretty impressive when he's been out there. When you look at the rushing game, Davin Booth was one of the transfers they brought in. Johnny Daniels also having a nice season. Considering the offensive line questions coming into this year, I'm very surprised at how effective they've been. I think credit to Jeff Lebby and that staff for just finding ways to churn out yardage there.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this way: on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being fewest, 10 being the most, what's your level of concern that this could be like a 4-quarter ball game, and things completely go off the rails for State?
Probably like a 3 or 4. It just feels like the Michael Van Buren and the skill talent that they have, they should be able to overwhelm UMass early and often. I am worried about their defense, though, giving up a lot of yards for no reason against a bad UMass team. So my panic meter is a little bit raised, but I just think they got too much firepower. To your point, Michael Van Buren's played really well, considering the circumstances, and I suspect this will be one of those games where you can pad the stat sheet a little bit.
Right, and again, here's the schedule. If you're just listening back later, UMass at home, obviously this weekend, at Tennessee, Missouri at home, and at Ole Miss. And yeah, they'll probably be underdogs in all the SEC games, but Tennessee, we have seen, can blow games. Missouri, who knows what they'll look like? Who knows if they'll have their quarterback? And then Ole Miss, crazy things happen in the Egg Bowl on a regular Saturday. I'm not going to kid any of the audience here. I would pick Ole Miss to destroy Mississippi State, but in particularly in Oxford with these two rosters. But who knows? Kiffin could be on his way to Florida. He could be on his way to NFL. He could be in a scandal by then. Who in the world knows? They could have tons of opt-outs if they get destroyed by Georgia and Florida. You know what I mean? So point being, Stephen, I think this is a real opportunity to get, obviously, the UMass game, but at least one more. And really, this final month is all about getting momentum heading into the offseason for Mississippi State.
Absolutely. And they have been a little bit hard to figure out because they played, well against Georgia, played well in the first half against Texas. And I thought they'd play better against Arkansas. So they've been a little bit up and down the last few weeks. I think if you're, looking for reasons for optimism, win this game, maybe scare a team down the stretch. Maybe that's Missouri. If Brady Cook's not back in the lineup, you have 2 weeks to get ready for that game. And then, of course, the Egg Bowl. Like if you could finish the year by either playing close against Missouri and Starkville, winning the game, keep the Egg Bowl close. That's a good way for Jeff Lebby to close out a very challenging first season. So getting this game and building some momentum and building on some positive things would be a good step for them going forward.
Mm-hmm. And then, all right, so what is your final prediction for this game?
Got Mississippi State 45, UMass 17.
17 is too much, Stephen. We gotta cut that down to 14. You know what I mean? Otherwise, fire the defensive coordinator.
I was worried 17 might be too low considering how she struggled this year. But I come back to that UMass game and watching them this year. If they get more than 25-30, I'm gonna be a little bit worried about Coleman Hutzler's job status come Monday.
Yep. All right. How about this one, Stephen? Kentucky at Tennessee. It's gonna be the night game, dark mode for Tennessee. They're gonna be wearing their black jerseys here. Tennessee favored by 16, according to our friends over at MyBookie. The over-under's 45.5 points. This is an SEC Network night game. Thoughts on this one?
I think in the big picture sense for both teams, for Tennessee, they've had 2 weeks to get ready. They're in the mix for the college football playoff. Don't have a letdown here. Kentucky should be motivated, especially because their bowl hopes are still alive, but also at the same time, they have played better against ranked opponents, whether that's Ole Miss or Georgia. So I think they have to go into this game thinking, been a little embarrassed the last few weeks, especially on defense. You get a struggling Tennessee offense, but you also get a chance to play spoiler against another ranked opponent. And if they win this game, they knock Tennessee out of the playoffs. So curious to see kind of what the motivation level is here for Kentucky, but also for Tennessee. They got a real chance to win this game and also, I think, win this game fairly convincingly, given what we have seen from Kentucky so far the last couple weeks.
And what do you think is the path to Kentucky actually pulling off this stunning upset? I hate to phrase it this way, Stephen, but is it more about Kentucky and what they could possibly do, or would that be more about Tennessee shooting itself in the foot? What do you think is the path to Kentucky making this a ball game and perhaps pulling off a stunning upset?
That's a great question, Mike, because my mind almost goes back to what they did against Georgia and Ole Miss, sort of lower possession, run the ball. I don't know that you can really run the ball, though, on Tennessee's defense. I think they're going to have some trouble being able to kind of play that style of game. I think they're going to need a few plays in the passing game, whether that's Vanderbilt, whether that's Wimsatt. They're going to have to hit a few, I think, big plays there. But also, I think a path to a Kentucky upset probably factors in a few Tennessee mistakes, much like we saw against Florida, like a turnover. Maybe it's a very sluggish performance by Tennessee's offense. Those two things, turnovers plus a poor performance by Tennessee's offense, and maybe in general, it's just Kentucky's defense playing like it did against Ole Miss and Georgia and keeping them in the game, giving them good field position, and they can kind of make it one of those 17-16 kind of ugly games.
Mm-hmm. But can they actually do that, given that, Auburn dominated them for the second half? Florida scored nearly 50 points on this, what was once believed to be an elite defense here. And heck, maybe they are still elite, but I have not seen it the last couple weeks, and I'm trying to figure out, or how about this? Because I don't even know what is the bigger problem right now, Stephen. Is it the defense? Is it the offense? I mean, the offense is dreadful, and yet here we go, the defense. I mean, Hugh Freeze came out here, my favorite coach here, and he said, Jarquez could have ran for 300. We took him out because he was tired, or so, he said some garbage like that this week. So, I mean, he's sitting here mocking him. What is the bigger problem, the offense or the defense?
I think in general, the bigger problem is the offense, but let me give you a weird answer. Your biggest problem for Saturday is probably the defense, because if nothing else, you could rely on that defense for Saturday night. As the saying goes, defense travels. You could go take your top ranked defense on the road to Knoxville, slow down Dylan Sampson, and make Tennessee beat you in the passing game. Tennessee's passing offense hasn't fired on all cylinders, so you take your chances. But I don't know that you can rely on that based upon the last 2 weeks. I mean, they struggled giving up big plays in the passing game to Florida. It was the rush game last week. It's almost like you plug one area, one other one opens up. So to me, the path for Kentucky winning this game is almost like Tennessee just playing really poor, because I don't know what you can lean on if you're Kentucky here.
Mm-hmm. And do you believe this will be a game where Tennessee can gain some confidence on the offensive side of the football, or will it be more of what we have seen? And maybe it's not so much this opponent, but it's they've had success against Florida and Alabama in the second halves. Then they've had the entire bye week. I don't know if you caught this, but the Arkansas loss came after a bye week for Tennessee. Let me throw that up there. And they came out, I think it was Dylan Sampson that said, we didn't prepare like we should have during the bye week. So will that repeat itself? You certainly hope not if you're Tennessee. But I guess the point that my rambling statement here, Stephen, is given the success in the second half of the last two games, given that they've had 2 weeks to prepare, what's your confidence level that they've corrected some issues and that we can actually have remember, it used to be, Stephen, Josh Heupel was so good at scripting and game planning that Tennessee scored on the first possession, like 9 out of 10 games. Now they can't even score in the first half, although you could make a fair point that, like in Florida game, Nico fumbled. In the Alabama game, Sampson fumbled. So I'm not putting this all on Josh Heupel. It's they got to execute. But again, what's your confidence level that we have maybe corrected a lot of these issues heading into this game?
So I think right off the bat, if you're Tennessee, I think the bye week struggles coming off the bye week and struggling against Arkansas ought to be motivation for a faster start here. This might be a little bit of a bold statement, and I apologize if it's a hot take. I don't think Tennessee's that far off on offense. Like when I watch them and I go back and watch it later in the week, you see like here's a drop pass, here's a miss pass, like Nico missing a throw down the sidelines. It's just a little bit too long. There's a drive, like you mentioned, there's a fumble. It's almost like if Tennessee can cut out the small mistakes, it can add up to a few more points per game. I don't think they're going to get to the Hendon Hooker level, like 40 points a game, but it feels like there's 7 to 10 points out there in the field that they're leaving every week out there. So if I'm an optimist here looking at Tennessee, I say coming off the bye week, the second half against Alabama, those two things equal improvement against Kentucky, a defense that has been very generous in giving up yards and points the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to be an optimist and say that Tennessee's offense, I think, gets off to a better start this week and finishes with a better start. Now, granted, they may not need that much to beat Kentucky, considering Kentucky didn't score very much. So,
yeah, I've tried not to laugh, but based on that observation you just said there, Stephen, it sounds like you got Tennessee and you got them pretty comfortably here.
I got Tennessee 34-10. I think they take care of business, Mike. I look at this matchup and I see Kentucky's rushing attack probably going to struggle against that Tennessee defense. That's a great shirt. That Tennessee defensive front, and I just don't see Kentucky's passing game being able to keep pace here. So maybe too optimistic on the score for the Vols, but I don't think this one's close.
Okay, yeah, no, I won't disagree with you. All right, but we got to move on, Stephen. How about this one? Big time rivalry game. Hopefully, Florida can make it a little bit more competitive than they have in years past. Unless you're a dog fan, then let's keep it exactly the way it's been. Complete domination. But what's your early read on this game, Stephen? This is again one of the best rivalries in all of college sports. Can Florida make this one a little bit more competitive?
I hope so. Because like you said, I love great rivalries. I love seeing Florida and Georgia play in Jacksonville. You look at the series recently, Georgia has won 6 out of the last 7, the last 3 by 20 or more points. So it hasn't been close, and it's been very one-sided in favor of Georgia. I think in the big picture here, this is kind of the question that looms for Florida is this the start of Billy Napier's last stand? Like, they have made some improvements the last couple weeks. They're playing better on defense. They've got a really promising quarterback in DJ Lagway. Do we see this game closer on the scoreboard, which helps Billy Napier build the case for 2025? The other side of it is looking at what Georgia has done in the series. No mercy for Georgia. Will show no mercy to Billy Napier in this game because just looking at how the last couple games have gone has been very one-sided in favor of Georgia. So curious to see if Georgia comes out and plays the game that we saw against Texas because of how dominant they looked, or do we get the Georgia that showed up against Mississippi State and was kind of sluggish? Curious to see how kind of that motivation level lies. I suspect they will be very motivated in a rivalry game, though, against Florida.
Right, you would certainly hope so. But again, which Georgia is Georgia, Stephen? Is it the Texas? Or is it the Kentucky? Is it the Mississippi State? Are you buying Georgia as the premier team in a? I know there's some Oregon love out there, but let's not kid ourselves, Steve. If Oregon and Georgia met, Dan Lanning, he's just Kirby Smart's son. I mean, they ain't got no prayer against Georgia. But again, is Georgia the elite of the elite? Do you think they've kind of worked their way into that position after the dominating performance in Austin, or do you still have questions about the Dogs?
I think this is the best team in college football. I think when the chips are down in the college football playoff and we start looking at paths, Georgia is the best team. They're the team that nobody's going to want to play. They've got to play up to that level, but I also think that when the playoff hits, they will play up to the level that we saw against Texas. So I think this is still the best team in college football right now.
Ray Durden says it's been 1,466 days since Florida thought about a win against Georgia. It's comments like that. That's what makes this a rivalry. You know what?
Oh man, I love the fact that we have the actual count of the days. That's amazing.
What about DJ Lagway though? I mean, if he can continue to progress, because here's where I'm kind of at with DJ. I think he's awesome. We saw him against Tennessee, nearly won him that football game. Should have went for 2. Scared money don't make money, Billy. Remember that. Completely dominant over Kentucky. If we could get that elite performance against Georgia, I think Florida's got a real shot. The problem is Kentucky and Tennessee, they ain't Georgia, particularly on the defensive side of the football. And I think the worst we have seen DJ Lagway, and worst maybe is not the right, well, I think it's an accurate word. He wasn't horrible, but when he faced Texas A&M and they could get after him, he just looked like a true freshman, as all these true freshmen really do. So that would be my biggest concern if I'm Florida, is that if these dogs get after him, we allegedly Quinn Ewers, elite Heisman contender, and top NFL prospect perhaps, they made him look all out of sorts. So I'm kind of having nightmares of what they could possibly do to DJ, given that DJ's so inexperienced at this level.
Yeah, that's my big fear here for Florida, is a true freshman quarterback going against Kirby Smart's defense, and a defense that's had 2 weeks to get ready for this game, and is also coming off a dominant performance at Texas. I imagine that they can carry that over. Like, they may have found that switch. They also may be getting healthier on that side of the ball. So I think all those things kind of spell trouble if you're Florida's offense. Like, how does your freshman quarterback hold up? But also, you're going to have to get good protection from your offensive line. I can only imagine the looks and exotic looks and blitzes that Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart have implemented for this game on Saturday. So that's one of my biggest keys here for Florida is, how do you ease DJ Lagway into this game? We've seen Georgia be a little vulnerable with some of the big plays. Do you let him take a couple chances early, sort of work the nerves out of the system? And then what does Georgia do, like on 3rd down and long, like being able to get to DJ Lagway and disrupt him? The other thing here is Florida's defense has been playing well the last couple weeks. Kentucky, Tennessee, and UCF, I don't know how much to believe in that. If it's real, then maybe they got a chance to make this one interesting in the fourth quarter. But, the matchups, I think, really favor Georgia. And on the other side for Georgia as well, I want to see Carson Beck rebound. 3 picks against Texas. Maybe he's been a little bit banged up. You got Trevor Etienne getting the run game going again for Georgia. So there's a lot of little interesting angles to this game outside of their rivalry and just kind of seeing some of these individual performances.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. Last question I got before you reveal your pick here. But how concerned, if at all, are you by Carson Beck? Again, it's not that he's like horrible or something, but he's just was hyped so much to such an extent. I think it's fair to say he's not quite lived up to it yet. Now, if they go on a heater, they win the national championship, who cares? Then he will have exceeded the hype perhaps. But, he just looks off to me. And even in that Texas game, they were dominant. A lot of passes off the mark, couple interceptions. Does that concern you at all at this point in time?
Yeah, it does, because he has been off, to your point. 8 interceptions over the last 4 games, and especially 3 against Texas, 3 against Alabama. Road environments, there's something to be said about that. But also, I think just in general, like they just don't seem to be firing on all cylinders in the passing game. Like, is it the offensive line injury they had with Tate Ratledge could help with pass protection? Receiver, tight end turnover certainly plays a part in it. But, if Georgia is going to meet that prediction I just gave, that they're the best team in college football, they're going to need Carson Beck to get back to playing like he did in the second half against Alabama. So I think it's critical to see him get back on track. I'm a little bit worried, but not too worried yet, if that makes sense.
Right. So who you got winning the ball game?
I've got Georgia 34, Florida 13.
Oh, Steven, after all that, blowout city again. Come on, man.
Hard to go against the series trends and what I think is the best team in college football.
Yeah, and the fact that Kirby hates the Gators, he knows how to push all them buttons to get the. I would imagine unless I think he's lost. How many times has he lost to Florida? Once,
just once. 2020.
Right. COVID year, I throw that out. I think as long as Kirby's there, I don't know if Florida's ever winning this game again, because it means that much to Kirby. But those are my words, not yours. But all right, we got to move on here, Steven. How about Vanderbilt? Very fascinated to hear what you got to say about this one. And our buddy Hugh Freeze, Auburn Tigers, favored by 6.5 points here. Over-unders 48. This is early one, 11:45 a.m. Central, 12:45 p.m. Eastern on SEC Network. What's your read on this one, Steven?
Interesting statistic here for Vanderbilt and Auburn. Vanderbilt has never won when this game is played in Auburn.
Wow.
They've played some other times in, at other locations, and they won in Nashville, but they've never won at Auburn. That was kind of shocking to me. Of course, East and West and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the big picture, there's two things here. Number one, Vanderbilt trying to get bowl eligible. Number two, if you're Auburn, can you build off last week's win over Kentucky and also start to chart a path towards bowl eligibility? Also, our man Diego Pavia trying to go 3-0 against Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze seeing Diego Pavia probably in his sleep, his Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger, I guess, as we get close to Halloween.
Yeah, no doubt. So, I mean, let me ask it to you this way: did last week winning against, not just against, but at Kentucky, did you learn more about Auburn in that matchup, or how about Vanderbilt? Again, I think the final score is a little deceiving. Texas controlled most of that game, but there's still currently a top 5 Texas team that Vanderbilt essentially took down to the wire. I mean, it came down to an onside kick. Even in defeat, who did you learn more about last week? Vanderbilt in a narrow defeat, or Auburn going on the road and beating Kentucky? Who do you think you learned more about last week?
Man, that's a tough call, because you could almost I think for Auburn, you could say they finally put it together. They put all these pieces on offense together and they got out of their own way for turnovers. But I think I'm going to go with the Vanderbilt side of that. And I think it gets back to something you and I have talked about this year, which is it's not the same old Vanderbilt. It's not the same old go get blown out on the road in SEC play. I mean, they had the win over Alabama. They took Texas to the brink. I did think Texas was kind of in control, never really 100% in danger there. But I also think that this team just continues to punch at top-ranked teams. So I probably learned more about Vanderbilt showing some fight in a game where arguably they didn't play their best game either.
Right, and that's just what I was going to reference, Steven. I rewatched that game, Vanderbilt, Texas, this morning, and I kind of forgot how many times Vanderbilt turned the ball over. And when you have a negative turnover margin against a top 5 team, and certainly when it's Vanderbilt, Texas, if you would have told me that preseason, I would have said, oh, well, Texas must have won by about 45, 50 points, right? No, I mean, final score is a little deceiving, but it was a 10-point ball game till the very end there. So I think that speaks to, just the caliber of Vanderbilt, which you just said. They didn't even play their best game, and it went down to the wire. So that tells me a lot. But how about let me ask it this way, Steven, a high-scoring game or low-scoring game? If it's a high-scoring game, Vanderbilt at Auburn, who does that favor? If it's a low-scoring game, who does that favor?
I think if it's a high-scoring game, I think it benefits Auburn, especially because I think there's some pretty favorable matchups for Auburn's passing game against Vanderbilt's secondary. I think Vanderbilt has the right formula. They play a lower possession game, maybe try to steal a possession where the turnover or, whatever means they need to do it. They play a lower possession game and let Diego Pavia work his magic in sort of that. You're only getting 4 to 5 possessions a half. That's probably where Vanderbilt needs to be, I think, to win this game. I think the higher scoring it goes, it probably benefits Auburn just because they're probably a little bit more versatile or just probably a little bit more capable of scoring that many points. Mm-hmm. Then again, Vanderbilt torched Alabama too. So,
well, we got a couple more games to break down, Steven, so let's get right down to it. Who you got in this one? You got the good guys or the bad guys?
Diego Pavia is 2-0 against Hugh Freeze, right? Yeah. Make it 3-0. Vanderbilt 27, Auburn 24. Picking the upset this week.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Hey, when I say bad guys, it's really just one bad guy. Big fan of Auburn, all the players and all that. Just obviously not one person there. All right. How about this one, Steven? Ole Miss at Arkansas. I mean, what a game this usually is here. Ole Miss favored by a touchdown on the road. Very dangerous to be an underdog playing Arkansas. Tennessee found out that the hard way. The over-under's 53.5 points, according to our friends MyBookie. 11 a.m. Central on ESPN.
Man, I am so glad that this game is early because this is one of my most interesting, intriguing games of the week, just because of sort of the setup. You've got Arkansas needing one victory to get bowl eligible. That would probably end any hot seat talk for Sam Pittman. On the other side, you've got Ole Miss. Basically, win out, every week you've got to play an elimination game, and it starts on Saturday in a very difficult spot. A spot where Arkansas has been having a lot of success against Ole Miss. They have won 4 out of the last 5 in this series against Ole Miss. So Ole Miss, urgency, elimination game, got to win. Arkansas, really nothing to lose. They've already knocked off Tennessee at home. Here's another top ranked opponent coming to Fayetteville, which I expect will give the Rebels a very warm welcome on Saturday.
Let's say Trey Harris is out, which I hope he's not. I hope he plays. I hope he's fantastic because he may be the best receiver in the country this year. But if he doesn't play, which quarterback do you think has a better day, Jackson Dart or Taylon Green?
Probably take Jackson Dart still, but not by much. I have a lot of trust in the Ole Miss defense. I think that's probably why I am, in this defensive matchup, I'm curious, like, what does Travis Williams and this defense do? I mean, they're very good up front. They've been a little bit more vulnerable in the secondary. I think they're 99th in the country in defensive pass success rate. So even without Trey Harris, you could envision Jackson Dart and some of those other receivers getting going. So I would probably still lean Jackson Dart. And also for Arkansas, no Jaquindon Jackson's also, I think, a pretty big setback.
Mm-hmm. How about Bobby Petrino versus Pete Golding? Who do you give the edge to there in that coaching matchup?
Man, that's a fantastic coaching matchup, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would still probably I'd like watching this Ole Miss defense. I'd probably give them a small edge, but especially because if we assume that this Ole Miss defensive front will be at full strength, then I think that matchup for Ole Miss defensively against the Arkansas offensive line probably favors them there. And I think that is kind of a theme for this matchup for me is going to be what happens in the trenches, because both of these, can Ole Miss protect Jackson Dart? What does Ole Miss and Walter Nolan do against this Arkansas offensive line too?
And I mean, would you have believed, Steven, that heading into this matchup in the preseason, that if Arkansas wins it, they'd have the same record as Ole Miss after the game? How wild is that?
That's wild. I thought coming into the season, Arkansas had a pretty good chance to maybe exceed preseason expectations, but I was also pretty high on Ole Miss. So for them to be at the same record if they lose here, the last dance would be pretty disappointing. I think it's fair to say, wouldn't it?
Right.
Feel like Jordan missing the shot against the Jazz.
Not only missing it, airballing it,
Right, yeah.
And the fact that, there have been some classic games between these two with Lane Kiffin and Sam Pittman on the sidelines. What's your confidence level that we'll have another one that may not go to the final possession, but what's your confidence level that we'll have a 4-quarter ball game here?
Very confident. Now I've been wrong before, so but I think, Mike, I think everything here says it should be a close game. I mean, it's Arkansas with nothing to lose. It's in Fayetteville. You've got the big playability of Taylon Green, his ability to create plays off schedule. Ole Miss defensively, with the way they have played this year, it's a fantastic battle. And then what does Ole Miss do? If Trey Harris can't go, what does he give you? If he's not out there, that means other guys got to step up. So I think the trenches and the quarterback play and some of the individual coaching matchups, I would be kind of surprised if this is a blowout. And to go back to last week, I thought we would see a much more motivated Ole Miss team coming out of the off week, and they were kind of sluggish for about 2 quarters. They kind of gained some steam in the second half, but I thought we would see a better effort there. So not an easy place to play, needless to say, at Fayetteville, and try to turn this around for Ole Miss.
All right, moment of truth. Who do you like in the game?
I got Ole Miss 27, Arkansas 24.
Oh, sorry, Pittman. I like you. Even Steven doesn't. All right, final game here, Steven. I'm just kidding, by the way. A&M at South Carolina. Possibly a big trap game here. The Aggies, though, not according to the odds makers. I mean, this was kind of stunning to me, Steven. Only a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under, 44.5 points. Night game, ABC, 7:30 Eastern. Thoughts on this one?
So I think these two teams are pretty similar. Like we talked about this on Monday, Mike, but great defensive lines. What happens at the line of scrimmage with the quarterbacks as well kind of factored in. very interested to see what A&M does. Do they go to Marcel Reed or do they go with Connor Wigman? I would expect that you have to go with Marcel Reed at this point. So, offensive line play is going to be so crucial here. Who can block one of these defensive fronts better? You've also got what sort of lies ahead for both teams. If you're South Carolina, you have played well in November under Shane Beamer. You've pulled off some upsets. If you're A&M, you move one step closer to the SEC championship game if you can win in a very difficult environment.
Mm-hmm. And would your prediction change at all, Stephen, if you knew one quarterback from the other, Wigman versus Marcel Reed? Would that change anything for you?
A little bit. I think A&M needs to go all in on Marcel Reed right now, because to me, they are a defensive-oriented, run-first team. And if you have to use Reed's mobility, he can open up, Amari Daniels, Le'Veon Moss. There is some development he needs to do as a passer, but he's probably only going to get that if he's playing every week against SEC defenses. So if I knew Marcel Reed was the starter, I might have a little bit more confidence in this pick. But I also think that the matchups here, can South Carolina's offensive line hold up against A&M's front? And if they can't, can Lenora Sellers create some plays in the passing game, maybe something off schedule? It kind of feels like small things might decide this game. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, because you've got the crowd at Williams-Brice, maybe a special teams play from South Carolina. We saw this against LSU with the block punt. Staying out of third down and long situations, like who can execute in passing, obvious passing downs, looms large. So got my eyes on the quarterback, line of scrimmage, and some of those small factors, because as the spread indicates, I think this matchup's pretty close.
Would you buy the fact that, let's say A&M may be a better team, not by a wide margin, but maybe by a slight margin, but that the Williams-Brice night crowd will be enough to make the difference and flip it in the other direction to help the Gamecocks win?
Absolutely. That plus the letdown factor after beating LSU. I think I'd be a little bit more worried about a letdown under Jimbo Fisher, but Mike Elko being in charge gives me a little bit more confidence. But anytime, we've seen it this year, like you win a big game, go on the road the next week, it's very easy to stumble. So A&M is walking into kind of that trap game situation, but they have the pieces to avoid a loss, their first loss in SEC play.
And how difficult do you think it'll be for A&M, like you just said, to get up off the mat? Well, not the mat because they won, but now they're the team with the target on their back. They're hearing, "Oh man, you are essentially a lock for the playoff now." We're already, they're probably not, but their fans are looking ahead to Texas. You know what I mean? And you got all these things that you're the only undefeated. You're top 10. When the playoff thing comes out, maybe you're top 5. How does this not seep in to a program? Quite frankly, they have exceeded all expectations, but I don't think they were. They haven't. They've not had to deal with this level of success, this level of hype. How big of a challenge is that for the Aggies?
I think it's a big challenge, but I also think I have confidence in Mike Elko to sort of steer the ship. I mean, you and I talked about this all offseason, and Mike Elko said it in his press conference. Like, he's not a fast-talking, head coach and all that. Whether he was talking about Jimbo or Brian Kelly, who knows? But he's just the blue-collar head coach that's going to do the work to make A&M into the SEC championship contender that they are. So I think it'll kind of be the same thing. Blue-collar work. They're not going to worry about last week. I think they can get refocused and I think maybe the environment of South Carolina will help them, because if South Carolina does what they did a couple years ago, score a touchdown on the kickoff, they'll be awake after that. I think A&M letdown is definitely in play, but I have confidence in Elko too.
And who is Coach Elko most likely to throw under the bus in the post game? Jimbo Fisher, Brian Kelly, or Shane Beamer?
I think if they lose, it's got to be Jimbo, right?
I kid. All right, Stephen, moment of truth here. Who you got winning the game?
Low scoring. Give me Texas A&M 24, South Carolina 20.
Man, what a game. Another classic SEC showdown. You got quite a few games going right down to the wire. I hope we do. and even got an upset special in there. So before you go, which one is your lock of the week here?
We got last week wrong, so we're going to get back on track. Give me Tennessee as the lock of the week.
Ooh. You just cursed them to lose. Way to go, Steven.
Sorry.
You just guaranteed Kentucky's going to win the game. Oh, no, I can't. But all right, Steven, we're about out of time. So before you go, can you tell the audience how to follow you, how to find your work?
Absolutely. You can check my work out at athlonsports.com. You can follow me on Twitter at athlonsteven, Steven LCFB over on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, Steven, we appreciate you, and we'll be back in literally just a couple minutes here with Cousin Shane to do an SEC mailbag show. Appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out. We'll catch you on the next one.